Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Titus woke up at 6 a.m., as usual, and it was still hazy outside the window. He turns gently to put his arm around his wife, Ursula, beside him, but realizes she's already up. It was counterintuitive. Normally, Ursula always had to wait for him to prod her a few times before she reluctantly left the warmth of the covers. He got up a little puzzled and went to the window, where he saw Ursula on the telephone in the garden, with a cigarette in her hand. Titus froze. When did Ursula start smoking? And she'd never been a fan of calling from the garden, saying the signal was bad there. An inexplicable uneasiness rushes through Titus' mind, a far cry from their usual calm mornings, as if foreshadowing something. Titus and Ursula have been married for almost 25 years. Their married life has been quiet, not too passionate, but happy and fulfilling. They have one daughter, Cynthia, who is 22 years old and about to graduate from college. Thinking of his daughter brings a proud smile to Titus' face. Cynthia was smart, accomplished, and a source of pride for him and Ursula. They are well prepared for their daughter's future and want her to have a bright future ahead of her. Titus is a middle manager in a large corporation with a stable job and a good income. Ursula also works as an administrator for a company, a small position but one she enjoys. For many years they have lived this uneventful and regular life, being devoted to each other and raising their daughter together. Titus had always thought that their life would continue peacefully like this until recently, when some changes in Ursula began to unsettle him. The initial changes started about a month ago. Ursula suddenly started to pay attention to her appearance. She bought a lot of new clothes, started wearing light makeup, and got a new haircut. Titus wasn't against his wife dressing up, it's just that she'd never done it before. She prefers to dress comfortably and casually and is not keen on makeup. Titus once jokingly asked her, "What hot guy are you going to meet?" Ursula just laughed and said, "What does it matter to you when a woman needs to dress herself?" Then Ursula started working overtime more often. She often came home late, sometimes late into the night. Titus asked her why she was so busy, and she always said that the company was short-staffed with a lot of projects lately. Titus understood her work and didn't think much of it. There was just one thing that made him feel strange. In the past, when Ursula came home from her overtime work, she would always complain to him about the hard work, but lately, she seldom brought up anything about her work. She just said that she was very tired and wanted to take an early rest. Then later, Ursula's phone calls picked up. She gets mysterious phone calls all the time and avoids Titus whenever she answers the phone. Titus had asked her curiously who was calling, and she always said gently, "Company business." She also started to not leave her cell phone alone, always carrying it with her even at home and even taking it into the shower. Titus discovers that she has also recently changed her cell phone password, which further heightens his suspicions. The thing that disturbs Titus the most is that Ursula's attitude towards him is getting colder and colder. They used to snuggle up every night to watch TV and talk about their day. Despite years of marriage, their intimacy remained harmonious, and Ursula always responded warmly. But lately, Ursula has always refused his closeness for various reasons. She either said she was too tired, or that she had to get up early the next day and went to sleep early with her back to him. These changes upset Titus, who begins to wonder if Ursula is having an affair. He even starts to notice the men at Ursula's company, especially her new manager, Jackson. Titus has a friend, Quinn, who works at a restaurant near Ursula Corporation. Quinn had told Titus that Jackson had a bad reputation and that he had been having affairs with female employees. Titus didn't take this to heart at the time. After all, it was just a rumor. But now, combined with Ursula's erratic behavior, he has to start wondering about this Jackson. "What are you thinking?" Ursula's voice suddenly sounded behind Titus, interrupting his thoughts. "Oh, it's nothing," Titus snapped back, hiding his emotions. "Why are you up so early?" "I couldn't sleep, so I got up and walked." Ursula replied faintly, her gaze a little evasive. "Oh yeah," Titus asked tentatively. "Did you meet someone named Jackson recently?" Ursula's body stiffens slightly, and she turns to look at Titus, a flash of panic in her eyes. "How do you know about him?" Ursula asked. "I heard it from Quinn. He works near your company and knows some of the people in your company." Titus stares intently into Ursula's eyes, trying to read something into her expression. "Oh, he's the new manager of our company." Ursula pretended to be calm and said, "Don't listen to Quinn. He's a gossip." "Is that so?" Titus' tone held a hint of skepticism. "Of course." Ursula walked over to Titus and took his arm. "You don't even suspect me of that, do you?" "How?" Titus smiled, but inwardly he became more uneasy. For the next few days, Titus kept Ursula under covert observation. He noticed that Ursula went out into the garden every morning to make phone calls, and that each call was long. He tried to sneak a look at her cell phone, but she always had it with her and set up a complicated password, so there was no way for him to get to it. He tried to look for clues through the emails, again coming up empty because she cleared her records promptly each time. This made Titus realize that conventional methods would be difficult to find conclusive evidence, I'm afraid. Just when Titus is at his wit's end, the company informs him that he's going out of town for a week on business. The news struck a chord in his heart, and he suddenly had a plan. He could use this business trip to end his trip early and return home quietly to see if Ursula really is keeping any secrets from him. The idea excited and made him nervous at the same time. He didn't know what he was going to face, but he knew he had to do it. One night before the trip, Titus talked to Cynthia on the phone. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Cynthia asked on the other end of the phone. "Daddy will be back next week, so take care of yourself at school and call Daddy if you need anything." Titus said lovingly. "Got it, Dad. You take care of yourself too," Cynthia said with concern. "Okay, baby, Daddy will take care of himself," Titus said, his heart filled with love for his daughter, but also mixed with a hint of unease and guilt. He doesn't know how this plan of his will affect Cynthia, but he has no choice. "Daddy, are you and Mommy okay?" Cynthia asked suddenly. "We're fine. What's wrong?" Titus asked with forced composure. "Nothing. It just seems like you guys have been acting kind of weird lately," Cynthia said. "It's probably just that I've been so busy with work lately. I'll be fine when Dad gets back," Titus consoled. After hanging up the phone, Titus was inconsolable. He didn't know what was wrong with his marriage, but he knew he had to find out. He hoped it was all in his head, but he was also prepared to face the worst. Titus arrived at the airport earlier than usual and decided to fly to his destination as originally planned. He needs this business trip as a cover, so he has to meet with his clients as usual and make them think it's business as usual. His plan was to find an excuse to end his business trip in 3 days and quietly return home. That way, Ursula won't be suspicious of his sudden return home. For 3 days, Titus was outwardly laughing and joking with his clients, but inwardly he had already flown home. He kept the meeting as short as possible and found a valid reason to end the trip early. He booked the earliest flight home and sent Ursula a text message before the plane took off. "Honey, the project is going great, but I may need a few more days before I can get back. Love you." Then he turned off his cell phone because he knew that if Ursula tried to contact him, his plan might be revealed. When the plane landed, Titus quickly picked up his luggage, hailed a cab, and headed straight for home. Instead of going in immediately, he found a secluded place nearby and watched for some time, not finding anything unusual, before he quietly opened the door of his home with his key. Titus closes the door softly, trying not to make any noise. The house was quiet, a very different atmosphere from when they were usually at home, where there was always soft music or the sound of the television playing, but at the moment there was only an unsettling silence. Titus' heart was beating faster and faster, and he could feel his palms beginning to sweat. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself, then tiptoed toward the bedroom. The closer we get to the bedroom, the more violent Titus' heartbeat becomes. He vaguely heard some strange sounds, like suppressed gasps and whispers, coming from the direction of the bedroom. He felt a wave of vertigo, and he was afraid to face what he might see next, but he couldn't stop his feet. He went to the bedroom door, which was hidden, and a faint ray of light came through the crack. Titus' hand trembled as he gently pushed the door open. The sight before him made Titus freeze in place for a moment, as if struck by a bolt of lightning. He sees that Ursula is entangled with a man who is none other than Jackson. They are naked, rolling around in the bed shared by Titus and Ursula, oblivious to Titus' presence. Titus felt his mind go blank with a buzz. He felt a wave of nausea, his stomach turning over and almost vomiting. At this moment, Titus felt like a prisoner sentenced to death, and all his hopes and illusions were dashed in an instant. He used to think he had a happy family, a wife who loved him, and a lovely daughter, but it all turned out to be an illusion. His wife, the woman he had loved for 25 years, was doing this nasty thing with another man in their bed. Titus wasn't sure how long he'd been standing in the doorway until a startled cry from Ursula snapped him back to reality. "Titus!" Ursula shouted in horror as she scrambled out of bed and grabbed a blanket to wrap around herself. Jackson, too, turned pale with fear as he scrambled to get dressed, mumbling, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Titus mechanically pulled his cell phone out of his pocket, turned on the video function, and aimed it at the two men on the bed. He felt his fingers trembling, but he forced himself to calm down. He wanted to leave evidence. Ursula sees Titus videotaping, and she cries, "Titus, don't. Please, don't." Jackson also pleaded, "Titus, this has nothing to do with Ursula. It's all my fault. Just leave her alone." Titus ignored their pleas as he continued to videotape them, capturing their panicked appearance in its entirety. He felt his heart bleed, but he knew he had to do it. He needed proof. He needed justice for himself. After about 2 minutes of recording, Titus turned off the video function. He felt a wave of emptiness, as if his whole body had been drained of strength. You. Titus's voice was hoarse, and he tried to say something but realized he couldn't say anything. "Titus, let me explain. It's not what you think." Ursula cried. "Explanation? What else is there to explain?" Titus interrupted her coldly. "What else is there to explain when you do this in front of me?" "Titus, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please forgive me." Ursula sobbed and pleaded. Jackson got dressed. He walked up to Titus and said in a low voice, "Titus, this whole thing is my fault. I'm the one who seduced Ursula. She had nothing to do with it. If you want to blame me, blame me." Titus looks at Jackson with anger and contempt in his eyes. "You think I'm going to believe your bullshit?" Titus said, "Scum like you don't deserve to be forgiven." Titus suddenly remembers that he needs one more thing. He needs a weapon to defend himself and to teach these two some lessons at the same time. He remembers his neighbor, Blake, who is an army veteran and has a shotgun in his house. Titus turned and walked out of the bedroom. He was going to borrow a gun. "Titus, where are you going?" Ursula shouted from behind him. Titus ignores her as he walks right up to Blake's door and knocks. Blake soon came to the door, and when he saw Titus looking pale and panicked, he couldn't help but ask, "Titus, what's wrong with you?" "Blake, I need your help," Titus said. "Can you lend me your shotgun?" "A shotgun?" Blake asked in surprise. "What do you need a shotgun for?" "I had a situation at my house, and I needed a gun to protect myself." Titus said he didn't want Blake to know what was going on. He just wanted the gun as soon as possible. Blake hesitates, but goes back inside and pulls out his shotgun. "Titus, be careful. This is no joke," Blake admonished. "I know, thanks, Blake," Titus said as he took the shotgun and turned around. Titus returns to the bedroom and sees Ursula and Jackson still standing there, their faces filled with fear. Titus raises his shotgun and points it at Jackson, who falls to his knees in fear as his legs give way. "Titus, don't. Please, don't shoot." Jackson cried out in horror, a foul odor coming from his body as he became surprisingly incontinent with fear. Titus watched Jackson's lousy appearance with no hint of pleasure, only endless sadness. He said coldly, "Get out. Get the hell out of here." Jackson ran out of the bedroom as if he'd been pardoned. Ursula cried and took Titus by the arm. "Titus, don't be like this. Let's talk about it, okay?" Titus shook off Ursula's hand. He wanted nothing more to do with the woman. "There is nothing left to talk about between us." Titus said, "You make me sick." "Titus, I really love you. I just got confused. Please give me a chance." Ursula cried. "Chance?" Titus said, "Do you think you have a chance? You betrayed me. You betrayed our marriage. You betrayed our family. And what chance do you want?" Ursula sobs uncontrollably, knowing that she has completely lost Titus' heart. "I'm sorry, Titus. I'm sorry." Ursula kept apologizing. But those apologies didn't mean anything anymore. Titus looks at Ursula, disappointment and pain in his eyes. He used to think he was the happiest man in the world, but now he realized that he turned out to be a complete fool. He had given everything he had for this woman, and in the end, this was what he got. "Let's get a divorce," Titus said. His voice was calm, but every word was like a knife in Ursula's heart. "No, Titus, don't," Ursula cried. "I can't live without you. I can't lose this family." "This family? Do you even deserve to mention this family?" Titus said. "This family ceased to exist the moment you and Jackson laid down in bed. Titus, we can start over. I can change. I really can change," Ursula pleaded. "Enough," Titus yelled. "I don't want to hear any more of this from you. I've had enough." Titus turned and walked out of the bedroom, not wanting to spend another second in this place of betrayal and lies. He walked to the living room, grabbed his bags, and left the home that was once filled with laughter without looking back. He knew that from this moment on, his life would change forever, but there was nothing left for him. Titus leaves the home that broke his heart and walks aimlessly down the street. The night was deep, and the cold wind blew like a knife against his face, but he couldn't feel a single chill. His heart had long since been frozen, leaving it hollow and numb. He didn't know where to go or what to do. He only knew that he never wanted to go back to that so-called home. Titus ended up staying at a small hotel. He lay in his humble bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The figures of Ursula and Jackson kept flashing through his mind, lingering like a nightmare. He felt a wave of nausea and pain, and he wanted to cry, but realized he couldn't anymore. Early the next morning, Titus set out to find a new place to live. He rented a small apartment not far from the office, which was Spartan, but at least it gave him a place to stay. He called Ursula, gave her his address, and told her to get her things in order, and he would find time to go back and get them. Ursula cries on the other end of the line and begs him to come home, but he hangs up coldly. Over the next few days, Titus began to work on the financial issues between him and Ursula. They went to the bank together to split the joint account and dispose of the joint property. In the process, Ursula again tries to win Titus back, but Titus is adamant. He tells Ursula that he has decided to divorce her and that this is an irrevocable fact. For his daughter Cynthia, Titus decided to continue paying her tuition and living expenses until she graduated and found a job. Cynthia calls from school to ask what's going on between her parents. Titus simply tells her that he and Ursula are having some problems and need some time apart and that she shouldn't worry. He didn't tell Cynthia the truth. He didn't want his daughter to know about her mother's scandalous behavior or have her young heart hurt. After dealing with his finances, Titus began to think about his future. He decided to apply for a transfer to the Savannah branch. He didn't want to stay in a city full of painful memories. He wanted to go somewhere where no one knew him and start his life over. He submitted a transfer request to the company and was quickly approved. While waiting for the transfer, Ursula and her mother, Helen, come to Titus several times, hoping that he will come around. Helen is a strong woman who accuses Titus of being irresponsible with his family and too desperate for Ursula. Ursula, on the other hand, cries and wails, saying that she was just confused, that she knows what she did wrong, and that she hopes Titus will give her another chance. Titus is fed up with Ursula and Helen's pestering. He tells them in no uncertain terms that he's completely disappointed in Ursula and that there's no longer any possibility of anything happening between them. He told them to stay out of his life, or he would take legal action to defend his rights. Nonetheless, Titus' heart is still full of contradictions and struggles. He doesn't know if he should believe Ursula's repentance or if he should give the marriage another chance. After all, they had a 25-year relationship and a daughter. But every time he thinks about that scene in bed with Ursula and Jackson, his heart aches so much he can't breathe. In order to get to the bottom of things once and for all, Titus decides to hire a private investigator to look into Ursula and Jackson's whereabouts. Through a friend, he contacted an experienced private investigator named Solomon. Titus gives Solomon information about Ursula and Jackson and asks him to investigate whether the two are still seeing each other. Solomon's efficiency was such that he quickly launched an investigation. He follows Ursula every day, filming her movements and recording her phone calls. After a week of investigation, Solomon told Titus that Ursula and Jackson were still in contact and that they often met at a hotel. When Solomon hands Titus a stack of photographs, Titus feels that his last hope has been dashed. In the photo, Ursula and Jackson are seen walking intimately together, talking and laughing, with absolutely no hint of remorse. Titus felt a pang of heartache as he couldn't believe that Ursula was so brazen as to claim to love him while continuing to fool around with Jackson. Titus has finally made up his mind to end this painful marriage once and for all. He declines Ursula's invitation to the company Christmas party and tells Ursula to never show herself again. He contacted his attorney and began drafting divorce papers. He decided to give up most of his property and only asked to keep custody of his daughter. He hopes to end this farce soon and start a new life. After speaking with his attorney, Titus made one last call to Ursula. He told Ursula that he had decided to divorce her and told her to contact her attorney as soon as possible to negotiate the divorce. Ursula was crying hysterically on the other end of the phone. She couldn't take it. She begged Titus to give her another chance, saying she could cut ties with Jackson and do anything to make up for her mistakes. Titus listens calmly to Ursula's cries, his heart numb. He tells Ursula that it's too late and that he can't possibly forgive her for her betrayal anymore. He told Ursula to behave herself and hung up. A few days later, Titus received a summons from the court, and Ursula filed a lawsuit against him, seeking to divide more of his property. Titus felt a pang of disgust. He hadn't expected Ursula to confront him for money. He decided to respond positively to the lawsuit and defend his legal rights. Waiting for his trial, Titus felt physically and mentally exhausted. His days are filled with work and divorce, as well as dealing with Ursula's constant harassment. He felt as if he was stuck in a quagmire from which he could not extricate himself. Finally, the day of court arrived. Titus and Ursula meet again in court, but the two are strangers. Ursula's attorney made an impassioned plea in court, attempting to portray Titus as an irresponsible husband and asking for a greater division of the estate. Titus's attorney argued that Ursula was at fault in the marriage by presenting photographs taken by Solomon, as well as transcripts of Ursula and Jackson's phone calls. Ultimately, the court ruled in favor of Titus. The court found Ursula to be grossly at fault in the marriage and therefore denied her request for a greater division of property. The court awarded custody of the daughter to Titus and required Ursula to pay some support. The moment he walked out of the courthouse, Titus felt a sense of relief. Although the lawsuit was physically and mentally exhausting, he finally got out of the painful marriage and fought for what he and his daughter deserved. He knew that there was a long road ahead, but he was ready for a fresh start. Time flies, and almost 2 years have passed since Titus moved to Savannah. Over the past 2 years, Titus has gone through many changes and has gradually emerged from the shadows of the past. His career at the Savannah branch went well, and with his excellent abilities and experience, he was quickly promoted to become a department manager. His life is gradually getting on track. He bought a small apartment near his company and redecorated his new home, which is simple but cozy. Outside of work, Titus enjoys walking the streets of Savannah and soaking up the city's unique charm. He loves the historic buildings, beautiful parks, and lively harbor. He often goes for walks on the beach at Tybee Island, listening to the sound of the waves lapping on the sand and feeling the ocean breeze as he relaxes his mind and body. Daughter Cynthia has also graduated from college and has found a satisfying job in the area. She is also in a stable relationship with her boyfriend Malcolm, and the two are engaged and planning a wedding this fall. Cynthia visits Titus often, and father and daughter are closer than ever. For Cynthia, her parents' divorce had been devastating, and she couldn't understand how two people who had once loved each other could come to this. But over time, she came to terms with reality. She understood her father's pain and respected his choice. She knew that both her father and mother needed time to heal, both needed to start their lives over. At Cynthia's wedding, Titus will act as a father and hand over his daughter's hand to the groom, Malcolm. It was one of the most important moments of his life, and he felt both happy and a little sad. He was happy for his daughter's happiness and regretted his once failed marriage. A few months before the wedding, Titus receives a call from Cynthia, who wants Titus to invite Ursula to her wedding. "Dad, I know there's a lot going on between you and Mom, Cynthia said over the phone, but I want you all to come to my wedding. After all, you're all the closest thing I have to people. Titus is silent. He understands his daughter's feelings, but he's not sure he's ready to face Ursula again. Dad, I know this may be difficult for you, Cynthia continued, but this is the most important day of my life, and I want you all to be there to witness my happiness. Titus eventually agrees to Cynthia's request. He knows that for the sake of his daughter, he must let go of his past grudges and learn to make peace with Ursula. At least, that's what he had to do at his daughter's wedding. On the other side of the fence, Ursula sold the house she and Titus used to live in and moved into a smaller apartment. She never remarried and lived alone. She's also long since cut ties with Jackson, who was fired shortly after that incident for repeatedly sexually harassing female employees of the company and is now unknown. Ursula often thinks about the past. She regrets what she did and misses the family life she once had. She knows she's lost Titus' love forever and can't make up for the damage she's done to her daughter, but she still hopes to be forgiven by Titus, or at the very least, hopes to remain friends with him. Ursula has also received an invitation to Cynthia's wedding. She is both excited and apprehensive, excited to be attending her daughter's wedding, and apprehensive because she doesn't know how to deal with Titus. She wonders if Titus still hates her, if he even wants to talk to her. On the day of the wedding, Titus arrived at the church early. He was hale and hearty in a sharp suit. He greeted guests at the church door and shook their hands and exchanged pleasantries. Soon after, he saw Ursula. She was wearing a lavender dress and light makeup and looked thinner and more gaunt than before. It was the first time they had seen each other since their divorce, and both of their eyes met in the air, both a little awkward. "Hello, Titus." Ursula spoke first, her voice shaking a little. "Hello, Ursula," Titus replied, his tone calm. The two were silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Are you okay?" Ursula asked. "I'm okay, are you?" Titus asked rhetorically. "I'm okay too," Ursula replied. There was another silence. "Where's Cynthia?" Titus asked, trying to break the awkwardness. "She's in there getting her makeup done. I'll go check on her," Ursula said before turning and walking into the church. Titus looked at Ursula's back with a great deal of emotion. He had once loved this woman deeply, but now there was only strangeness and detachment between them. The wedding begins, and Cynthia, dressed in her white wedding gown, slowly makes her way to the altar on the arm of Titus. Titus places Cynthia's hand in Malcolm's and sends them his blessing. He was overwhelmed by the happy smile on Cynthia's face. After the wedding, guests flocked to the garden for the wedding reception. Titus and Ursula meet again, and both are a little uncomfortable. "Congratulations, Cynthia is a good girl," Ursula said to Titus. "Thanks, she's beautiful like you," Titus replied, complimenting Ursula for the first time since his divorce. There was a glimmer in Ursula's eyes, but it quickly dimmed again. "Thanks," she whispered. The two fell silent again. "Titus," Ursula wanted to say. "What?" Titus asked. "I know the past can't be undone," Ursula said, "but I want you to know that I've always regretted it, and I hope that we can still be friends." Titus looked at Ursula with sincerity and anticipation in her eyes. He was silent for a long time and then said, "Ursula, the past is the past and I don't want to bring it up again. We can try to be friends, but that's all." A flicker of disappointment flashed in Ursula's eyes, but she nodded. "Yes, thank you, Titus," she said. During his time in Savannah, Titus had a new life of his own. He started trying to date and was introduced to a lady named Nora by a friend. Nora is an elementary school teacher with a gentle and kind personality who gets along well with Titus. After the two spend some time together, Titus realizes that he has developed a crush on Nora. He knows he's out of the past and ready to start a new love life. One night, Titus and Nora were having dinner at a restaurant. It was their first official date, and both were a little nervous. "What do you think of Savannah?" Nora asked. "I like it here," Titus replied. "It's quiet and it's nice to live." "Me too," Nora says. "I was born here, grew up here, and have a deep affection for this place." The two talked a lot about each other's jobs, hobbies, and families. Titus discovered that he and Nora had a lot in common. They both enjoyed reading, traveling, and cooking. Do you have children? Nora asked, knowing that Titus had been married before. I have a daughter. Her name is Cynthia, and she is married. Titus replied. It's so nice, Nora says. I've always wanted a child, but I haven't met the right person yet. I'm sure you'll come across it, Titus said. After dinner, Titus takes Nora home. In front of Nora's house, they say goodbye. It was a lovely evening, thank you, Nora said. Me too, nice to meet you, Titus replied. Nora smiled, then turned and walked into the house. Titus looked at Nora's back with warmth and hope in his heart. He knows that he has turned a new page in his life and that he will work with Nora to create a bright future for them. When he got home, Titus stood in front of the window and watched the beautiful night view of Savannah. He thought of Ursula, of Cynthia, and of Nora. He knew that the past could not be changed, but he could choose his future. He is thankful for all that life has given him, both pain and pleasure, and has allowed him to grow into a better person. He is confident that the future will be brighter, and he will continue to move forward with hope and courage. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.